Admiral Jessica Morgan straightened her navy blue dress uniform, the polished metals catching the artificial light of the antechamber. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of Earth's future on her shoulders. "They're ready for us," Ambassador Marcus Okafor said, his calm voice belying the tension evident in his perfectly pressed suit and carefully neutral expression. "Then let's not keep the galaxy waiting," Morgan replied with a confidence she only partially felt. The massive doors to the Galactic Confederacy's Grand Summit Hall parted, revealing a chamber that seemed designed to intimidate newcomers. Crystalline structures rose hundreds of feet overhead, capturing and refracting starlight in patterns representing the member species' home constellations. Representatives from 37 spacefaring civilizations turned to observe the human delegation's entrance, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed disdain. The Illuvian Council members, their translucent bodies glowing with internal bioluminescence, occupied the most prominent positions. Their species had achieved spaceflight when humans were still building pyramids, a fact they never let newcomers forget. Beside them loomed the massive forms of the Zorthax delegation, their armored exoskeletons adorned with trophies from military campaigns spanning centuries. "The representatives from Earth may present their case for Confederate membership," announced the Illuvian Primarch, his voice melodious but distant. Morgan stepped forward, activating the holographic display they had prepared. Three-dimensional images of Earth's cities, shipyards, and defense systems materialized above the central platform. "Honorable members of the Confederacy," she began, her voice strong and clear. "For 2 centuries, humanity has explored our solar system. For 50 years, we have reached toward nearby stars. We present ourselves as candidates for membership, offering our unique perspectives, sciences, and alliance in mutual defense." The technical specifications of Earth's fleet appeared, showing vessel capabilities, weapons yields, and defensive systems. Morgan highlighted the advancements humanity had made in propulsion technology, emphasizing their focus on sustainable development and ethical expansion. A low rumble of chittering laughter began among the Zorthax representatives before growing into full-throated mockery. Supreme Commander Kazarak rose to his full 12-foot height, mandibles clicking in amusement. "The humans propel themselves with chemical explosions and basic fusion," he announced, triggering more laughter across the chamber. "Their ships would crumble under a single volley from even our scout vessels." Ambassador Okafor maintained perfect composure, though Morgan noticed the slight tightening of his jaw. An Illuvian counselor floated forward, her luminous form pulsing with what the humans had learned was an expression of patronizing sympathy. "Your species shows commendable progress for its developmental stage," she intoned. "Perhaps with another century of technological maturation, you might achieve the minimum standards for consideration." The holographic display above them flickered as a Zorthax analyst manipulated the feed, enlarging the image of Earth's flagship destroyer. "Observe their primary armament, kinetic projectiles accelerated by magnetic fields," Kazarak announced with theatrical disdain. "They throw rocks, esteemed colleagues. Advanced rocks, but rocks nonetheless. My bridlings construct more impressive weapons as playthings." Waves of amusement rippled through the chamber. Even species that had maintained diplomatic politeness couldn't help but join the chorus of superiority. The human delegation stood unflinching under the barrage of ridicule, their faces masks of professional dignity. "We appreciate the Confederacy's consideration of our application," Morgan said when the laughter finally subsided. "We hope for continued dialogue as we develop further." As they exited the chamber, the mockery followed them like a shadow. Once the privacy field of their shuttle engaged, Morgan's diplomatic facade cracked, revealing cold steel beneath. "Send the signal," she ordered, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Operation Shadow Veil is now active." Captain Maya Rodriguez stood motionless on the bridge of the EFSS Defiant, her silhouette barely visible against the darkness of the command center. The ship's systems ran on minimal power, its advanced camouflage rendering it virtually undetectable against the cratered surface of Ta Siti's outermost moon. "Status report," she said quietly, her voice carrying in the hushed atmosphere of the bridge. Lieutenant Commander Jackson looked up from his console. Zorthax raiders have begun their second wave of landings, Captain. They're targeting the agricultural processing centers now. The Colonial Defense Force is overwhelmed. Rodriguez nodded, her expression grim as she watched the tactical display. The peaceful farming colony below had no real defenses, a perfect target for Zorthax aggression. Colonists of 7 different species, including a small human contingent, were being rounded up like cattle. Confederate response time? She asked, already knowing the answer. The Council is still debating the appropriate protocol. Communications Officer Chen replied. Disgust evident in her voice. Current estimate for relief forces is approximately 2 standard months. A bitter smile crossed Rodriguez's face. 2 months. By then, there won't be a colony left to save. The bridge crew maintained their stations in tense silence, watching the systematic destruction unfold below. They had been stationed here for 3 weeks, observing and recording, but not intervening. Those were their orders. Remain hidden, gather intelligence, do not engage unless authorized. The communications console chimed softly. Chen straightened in her chair. Captain, priority transmission from Earth Embassy on Confederate Central. It's coded Nightingale. Rodriguez snapped to attention, all weariness vanishing. Put it through to my private channel. The message was brief and encrypted, but its meaning clear. Nightingale protocol authorized. A predatory smile spread across the captain's face as she returned to the command chair. Battle stations. Power up all systems. Disengage camouflage on my mark. The bridge erupted into controlled activity. Darkened consoles illuminated, revealing technology far beyond what Earth had displayed to the Confederacy. The ship's true form began to emerge as adaptive camouflage deactivated, revealing sleek, aggressive lines and weapon systems that had never appeared in any registry shared with alien allies. Quantum displacement drive standing by, the navigation officer reported. Rodriguez leaned forward. Target coordinates. Locked on the Zorthax command carrier, 400 meters above the colony's central district. She nodded. Execute jump. Space folded around the Defiant, the fabric of reality briefly bending to human engineering. In an eye blink, the warship vanished from the moon's shadow, reappearing in Ta CTV's upper atmosphere, directly above the largest Zorthax vessel. Below, desperate colonists preparing for their final stand looked up in confusion as a massive shadow suddenly appeared above their tormentors. The Zorthax raiders paused their assault, equally bewildered by the ship that had materialized from nowhere. Inside the Zorthax command carrier, Supreme Raider Kravak's mandibles clicked in surprise. Identify that vessel, he demanded. His sensor officer's voice trembled. It appears to be human. Supreme Raider. Human. Kravak's compound eyes narrowed. Impossible. No human ship possesses jump technology, and none are that size. The communications panel chimed. They're hailing us. Supreme Raider. Display. Kravak ordered, mandibles twitching in annoyance. Captain Rodriguez's face appeared on screen, her expression calm and professional. Zorthax vessels, this is Captain Maya Rodriguez of the Earth Fleet ship Defiant. You are engaged in an unauthorized attack against a civilian colony. Power down your weapons and withdraw immediately. Kravak's anterior limbs clicked together in what passed for laughter among his kind. A single human vessel dares to challenge the might of a Zorthax raiding fleet. Your bravery borders on insanity, Captain. Rodriguez's smile never reached her eyes. This is your only warning. Supreme Raider Kravak's mandibles clicked rapidly in what his officers recognized as anticipatory pleasure. The single human vessel floating before his fleet provided an excellent opportunity to demonstrate Zorthax superiority and gather useful salvage. Target their propulsion and weapons systems, he ordered. I want that ship disabled, not destroyed. Their technology, primitive as it is, may have some salvage value. His gunnery chief bobbed his armored head. All batteries locked on target. Supreme Raider. Fire. The Zorthax command carrier unleashed a devastating barrage. Plasma torpedoes and graviton beams, weapons that could shatter moons, streaked toward the Defiant. Behind the command carrier, 4 support vessels added their firepower to the assault. The combined energy output would have vaporized any vessel known to Confederate records. On the Defiant's bridge, Captain Rodriguez remained unnervingly calm. Dimensional capture fields active. The space around the human vessel shimmered as dozens of small, swirling vortices materialized in the path of the incoming barrage. The devastating weapons fire struck the vortices and simply vanished. Not deflected, not absorbed, completely removed from normal space. Silence fell across the Zorthax command bridge. Krivak's compound eyes widened in disbelief. "Where did our weapons fire go?" he demanded. Before his sensor officer could respond, Captain Rodriguez's voice cut through all Zorthax communication channels. "That was your warning shot, Supreme Raider. Your weapons are now in our possession, not destroyed. The next hostile action will be answered in kind." Below on the colony surface, the settlers who had been bracing for orbital bombardment watched in awe as rectangles of light appeared in the sky. The underside of the Defiant's hull was opening, revealing deployment bays. Figures dropped from the openings, human Marines in powered combat armor, descending in controlled free fall toward the colony center, where colonists had been corralled by Zorthax ground forces. Commander Sarah Wells led the first wave, her armor's heads-up display marking priority targets as she fell. "Strike team, remember our priorities. Civilian protection first, neutralization of hostiles second. Lethal force only as last resort." The Marine's armor gleamed like polished obsidian, absorbing and redirecting light to create the impression of falling shadows. They struck the ground with precision, impact absorption systems preventing even the slightest crater where they landed. The Zorthax ground forces, accustomed to overwhelming terrified colonists, found themselves facing an enemy that moved with impossible coordination. The Marines' neural interfaces linked their combat systems into a hive mind of tactical awareness. They seemed to anticipate every Zorthax movement seconds before it happened. A group of raiders fired concentrated plasma bursts at Wells. Her armor's defense field activated, creating a shimmering barrier that caught the energy weapons and redirected them harmlessly into the ground. "I need an evac corridor for 40 civilians, mixed species," she transmitted, her voice steady as she engaged 3 Zorthax warriors simultaneously. Her powered gauntlets moved in precise strikes, targeting nerve clusters through armor plates with surgical precision. The massive aliens dropped without lethal injuries. In orbit, Supreme Raider Krivak watched in growing horror as his ground forces reported failure after failure to stop the human Marines. "Reinforcements have arrived, Supreme Raider," his tactical officer reported with evident relief. 3 Hunter-class vessels just emerged from hyperspace. Krivak's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "Order them to attack immediately." The newly arrived Zorthax vessels surged forward, weapons primed for a killing blow against the Defiant. Captain Rodriguez simply nodded to her weapons officer. "Return to sender," she said quietly. The swirling vortices that had captured the earlier barrage suddenly reappeared, this time surrounding each Zorthax vessel. From the vortices emerged the very same energy weapons that had been fired at the Defiant, now precisely targeting each ship's propulsion systems. The Confederate Security Council chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives from 27 species shouted over one another as footage from Ta CDV played across massive holographic displays. The images showed human Marines evacuating colonists while the ESS Defiant systematically disabled the entire Zorthax raiding fleet without destroying a single vessel. "This is an outrage," bellowed the Muldarian ambassador, his thick hide flushing purple with agitation. "Humans have concealed military capabilities that far exceed their declared technology level. A violation of transparency protocols," added the Vex collective speaker, her crystalline form vibrating with indignation. At the center of the storm stood Ambassador Marcus Okafor, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the pandemonium surrounding him. He waited patiently, hands folded before him, as accusations flew from all sides. The Illuvian Council elder raised his luminescent appendages, gradually bringing silence to the chamber. Ambassador Okafor, your species has much to explain. The technology displayed at Ta's City V bears no resemblance to the capabilities Earth presented during membership application. I note with interest, Okafor replied smoothly, that the Zorthax delegation is not present to defend their unprovoked attack on a civilian colony. That is not the issue at hand, the Mulderian representative growled. With respect, Okafor countered, it is precisely the issue. While this council debated the proper procedural response to a distress call, settlers were being slaughtered. The massive doors to the chamber slid open. Admiral Jessica Morgan entered with measured steps, flanked by representatives from 3 species whose worlds had previously suffered raids. Behind them came a procession of former colonists from Ta CDV, living witnesses to both Zorthax cruelty and human intervention. The Council recognizes Admiral Morgan of Earth, the Illuvian elder intoned reluctantly. Morgan's uniform was impeccable, her posture perfect as she took her place beside Okafor. Distinguished representatives, Earth has maintained operational security regarding our full defensive capabilities for one simple reason. She paused, her gaze sweeping the chamber. Corruption at the highest levels of Confederate security. Gasps and protests filled the room, quickly silenced as Morgan activated her own data feed. The holographic displays shifted to show a complex web of communications, financial transactions, and classified intelligence reports. For the past 11 years, Earth has maintained an extensive intelligence network throughout Confederate space, she continued. We have documented 17 separate instances where Zorthax forces attacked developing worlds. In each case, distress calls were delayed or misrouted through the Confederate emergency response system. The data expanded, highlighting key council members who had received substantial transfers of rare resources shortly before critical votes on security matters. Transaction records, communication logs, and surveillance footage built an irrefutable case. We concealed our true capabilities because our intelligence suggested elements within this very council were compromised, Morgan stated flatly. The evidence before you confirms our suspicions. An elderly Durlan rose shakily to his feet, his species' reputation for absolute honesty lending weight to his words. My world was raided 3 cycles ago. 40,000 dead, thousands more taken. The Confederate response arrived too late to save anyone. His voice broke. Had Earth's vessel been there, as it was at Ta City? The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. In their fortress-like embassy across the diplomatic quarter, the remaining Zorthax leadership convened an emergency session. Supreme Commander Vraktor's rage filled the darkened chamber. The humans have exposed our operations and humiliated our forces. This cannot stand. His senior strategist approached cautiously. Perhaps diplomacy. Diplomacy is finished, Vraktor snarled. The humans must be crushed decisively before more of our activities are exposed. Deploy the 9th Battle Fleet to the Sol system immediately. Their world will burn as an example to all. Admiral Krovac stood on the command deck of the Inevitable Dominance, flagship of the Zorthax 9th Battle Fleet. Around him, 60 warships moved in perfect formation as they emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. His compound eyes gleamed with anticipation as he surveyed the tactical displays. Commence long-range scans, he ordered. I want complete intelligence on defensive positions before we broadcast our demands. The Zorthax fleet had entered the system beyond the orbit of Pluto, a position considered the safe strategic distance for an invading force. From here, they could launch attacks while maintaining enough separation to avoid significant counterattacks from planetary defense systems. Scans complete. Admiral, reported his sensor officer. We detect 5 vessels moving to intercept. Configuration matches the outdated human ships presented at the Confederacy Summit. Krovac's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Pathetic. They send 5 obsolete vessels against 60 of our finest warships. He turned to his communications officer. Prepare to broadcast surrender terms. Inform the humans that their punishment for deception will be severe, but if they submit completely, we may spare their homeworld from sterilization. On the bridge of the EFS Valiant, Commander Lisa Hayes watched the approaching Zorthax Armada with practiced calm. All ships maintain formation. Transmit status reports on encrypted channel. Her communications officer nodded. The Zorthax are preparing to broadcast. Commander. Let them talk, Hayes replied, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Admiral Morgan, the stage is set. They've taken the bait. Deep within Neptune's rings, hidden among the ice and rock debris, Admiral Jessica Morgan received the transmission. Around her, the true extent of humanity's naval power waited in perfect stillness. 73 advanced warships, their hulls incorporating technology never revealed to the Confederacy, had maintained position for days, their presence concealed by gravitational distortion fields. All vessels, final systems check, Morgan ordered. Prepare for synchronized emergence on my mark. Commander Hayes' voice came through the secure channel. They're broadcasting surrender terms. Admiral, quite detailed demands for our technology, and creative descriptions of what they plan to do to Earth if we resist. Record everything, Morgan replied. The Confederacy should hear their true intentions. She paused, studying the tactical display one final time. Commence Operation Checkmate. Across the Neptune orbital region and throughout the shadowed areas of the Kuiper Belt, human vessels disengaged their stealth systems simultaneously. Energy signatures bloomed across Zorthax sensors like sudden stars appearing in a dark sky. On the inevitable dominance, the sensor officer's panicked cry interrupted Krovak's victory speech. Admiral, massive energy signatures emerging from Neptune's rings and the Kuiper Belt. Configuration unknown. They don't match any registered human vessels. Krovak spun toward the display, his exoskeleton clicking in agitation as he saw the tactical situation transform in seconds. Where moments before his fleet had held overwhelming superiority, they now found themselves completely surrounded by advanced warships that had materialized from nowhere. Impossible, he whispered. There are more than 70 vessels. Earth doesn't possess this kind of fleet. Admiral Morgan's voice transmitted across all frequencies, calm and measured. Zorthax, 9th Battle Fleet. You entered Sol space with clear hostile intent against a sovereign world. You are now surrounded by the Phoenix fleet of Earth. You thought you were the wolves coming for sheep. You were wrong. As Krovak opened his mandibles to order an attack, the human fleet moved with impossible coordination. They didn't charge forward. Instead, they released thousands of small objects that accelerated toward the Zorthax formation. What are those? Demanded Krovak. His tactical officer's voice trembled. Unknown technology. Admiral. They're generating localized gravity fields around our vessels. The Illuvian Council chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from every Confederate species packed the ancient hall, their attention fixed on the central holographic display, showing the complete neutralization of the Zorthax 9th Battle Fleet. Not a single vessel had been destroyed, yet all 60 warships now drifted powerless in space, their weapons and propulsion systems precisely disabled by targeted graviton bursts. Elder Toleran, the most ancient of the Illuvian Council, floated forward. His translucent form pulsed with colors that conveyed deep disturbance to those who could read Illuvian emotional signaling. We have called this emergency session to address revelations that threaten the very foundation of our Confederacy, he announced, his melodious voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. Ambassador Okafor of Earth has requested the right to present evidence of most disturbing allegations. Okafor stepped into the center of the chamber, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the tension filling the room. Esteemed representatives, what you are about to see is the result of 11 years of covert human intelligence gathering. The holographic display shifted, showing a vast network of connections between Zorthak's operations and various Confederate officials. Financial transactions, communication logs, and surveillance footage painted a damning picture. The Zorthak's imperative has been systematically suppressing technological development across this galaxy, Okafor continued. They have conducted raids on hundreds of developing worlds, not merely for resources or territory, but to steal innovations and eliminate potential competitors before they could achieve Confederate membership. Murmurs of shock rippled through the assembly as the evidence expanded, highlighting specific cases where promising civilizations had been set back decades or even centuries by targeted Zorthak's operations. But perhaps most disturbing, Okafor said, his voice dropping slightly, is their network of influence within this very Confederacy. The display shifted again, highlighting 7 high-ranking Confederate officials, including 3 council members who had received substantial bribes to delay responses to distress calls and suppress investigations into Zorthak's activities. The evidence was meticulous and undeniable. A Merchel representative, their feathered crest flattened in distress, rose to speak. This explains why our colony on Proxima Dennet received assistance so late. Thousands died waiting for Confederate ships that never arrived. Okafor nodded solemnly. And now we must address the question that has dominated these proceedings. Why did Earth conceal its true technological capabilities? He paused, allowing the question to hang in the air. Because we detected Zorthak's observation vessels near Earth centuries ago. The holographic display showed grainy historical footage. A UFO sighting from 2047 that Earth's public had dismissed as fiction, but which military intelligence had identified as a Zorthak scout ship. Our species made a collective decision, Okafor explained. We would present a carefully curated image of our civilization while developing our true capabilities in absolute secrecy. Not out of deception, but from hard-learned caution. The display shifted to show Earth's hidden achievements. Revolutionary propulsion systems, energy generation methods far beyond what they had shared, medical advances that could benefit the entire Confederacy. Elder Toleran drifted closer to Okafor. You developed these technologies in isolation, without the benefit of Confederate exchange programs. We did, Okafor confirmed, and we stand ready to share them now, under a reformed Confederate system, one where technological exchange benefits all, not just the powerful few. In their damaged embassy, the remaining Zorthak's leadership received reports of the council session with mounting horror. Their carefully constructed network of influence was collapsing around them. The Zorthak's Grand Armada emerged from faster-than-light travel at what their tacticians had calculated as the optimal safe distance from Sol. 300 capital ships formed a perfect attack formation, their silhouettes blotting out distant stars. At the center of the formation, 5 massive vessels, designated planet killers, pulsed with ominous energy. On the command deck of the Unconquerable Will, Admiral Supreme Vraktor surveyed the tactical display with cold determination. The humiliation at Neptune had driven him to deploy every available warship in the Zorthak's fleet. This would not be a mere punitive expedition. It would be the complete eradication of a species that dared challenge Zorthak's dominance. Commence long-range scans, he ordered. Locate their Phoenix fleet. His sensor officers worked frantically, scanning the system. Admiral Supreme, we detect human fleet elements near their homeworld and scattered throughout their system. They appear to be waiting. Vraktor's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Of course they wait. Even their advanced vessels cannot hope to match our numbers. He turned to his communications officer. Broadcast our ultimatum on all frequencies. The massive view-screen flickered to life as Vraktor positioned himself before it. Humans of Earth, your deception and interference in Confederate matters has not been forgotten. Surrender your advanced technology immediately or face extinction. You have 1 standard hour to comply. The response came not from military channels, but a civilian frequency. The image that appeared on screen was not Admiral Morgan or any military commander, but a middle-aged woman in a simple lab coat. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she regarded the Zorthax commander with an expression that bordered on pity. "Admiral Supreme Fracture, I am Dr. Eleanor Reynolds, Director of Earth's Defense Science Division." Her voice was calm, almost conversational. "You still don't understand what humanity is," she continued with a tone of gentle disappointment. "We're not warriors by preference. We're engineers." Vractor's compound eyes narrowed. "Your point, human. My point is that you're still thinking in terms of fleets and direct confrontation." She sighed. "We stopped thinking that way centuries ago." At her nod to someone off-screen, nothing seemed to happen for several seconds. Then, across the Zorthax tactical displays, thousands of small signals began to appear throughout the entire Sol system. "Detecting energy signatures," reported the sensor chief, confusion evident in his voice. "They're coming from debris fields, asteroid clusters, and satellites orbiting every planet and major moon in the system." Dr. Reynolds continued, her expression now serious. "What you're detecting is the Sentinel Network, a defensive grid we've been building piece by piece for the past 50 years. Each of those insignificant satellites and pieces of apparent debris is an autonomous weapons platform linked by quantum computing systems." On the tactical display, the implications became horrifyingly clear. The Grand Armada wasn't positioned to attack Earth. They had unwittingly placed themselves inside the largest kill box in military history. "Impossible," Vractor whispered. "No species could construct such an extensive system without detection." "We did it in plain sight," Reynolds replied. "Disguised as scientific instruments, communications relays, and space debris. Your observers saw exactly what we wanted them to see." The image changed as Admiral Morgan joined Reynolds in the frame. "You came to exterminate us and prove your dominance," Morgan said gravely. "We're offering you one chance to evolve beyond that impulse." 1 month after the Zorthax surrender, the Galactic Confederacy convened in a transformed chamber. Gone was the hierarchical arrangement that had elevated founding species above newer members. In its place stood a perfect circle of equal positions, a physical manifestation of the new order emerging from the ashes of the old system. Admiral Jessica Morgan and Ambassador Marcus Okafor entered together, their expressions solemn as they took their places in the circle. The hall fell silent, every representative acutely aware that they were witnessing a pivotal moment in galactic history. "The Confederacy recognizes Earth's delegation," announced Elder Toleran, his translucent form glowing with subtle patterns that conveyed respect, a stark contrast to the condescension displayed at their first meeting. Ambassador Okafor stepped forward. "Distinguished representatives, we gather today not to celebrate victory, but to build something greater than any single species could achieve alone." He activated the central display, showing a comprehensive blueprint for a reformed interstellar community. Earth proposes a new Confederate charter based on 3 principles: transparent technological exchange, protection for developing civilizations, and a defensive pact with the strength to enforce these protections. A murmur ran through the assembly, a mixture of hope and trepidation. The Borleth representative, her crystalline structure glinting in the chamber lights, voiced what many were thinking. "While we welcome these principles, we must address the concerns shared by many worlds. Will Earth simply replace the Zorthax as the dominant military power in our galaxy?" Admiral Morgan moved to stand beside Okafor, a valid concern. "Power unchecked leads to corruption, regardless of species." She gestured, and Dr. Eleanor Reynolds joined them, carrying a small data crystal. "That's why Earth has made an unprecedented decision." Dr. Reynolds placed the crystal in the central console. The display shifted to show detailed schematics of humanity's most advanced technologies: propulsion systems, defensive capabilities, weapons designs, quantum communication networks. "We are placing our most advanced technologies under the oversight of a new multi-species committee," Reynolds explained. "Additionally, we're opening Earth's universities to students from all Confederate worlds, effective immediately." Stunned silence greeted this announcement. The Nurkai ambassador, whose species had suffered greatly under Zorathak's raids, found his voice first. "Why would you share technologies that could potentially be used against you?" Morgan's expression softened slightly. "We hid our true capabilities because history taught us caution," she explained. "But the future requires something harder than victory in battle. It requires trust." The chamber doors opened, admitting a delegation that caused many representatives to shift uncomfortably. The new Zorathak civilian government, established after the military hierarchy's collapse, approached the human representatives. Their spokesperson, Rilta, once imprisoned for advocating peaceful coexistence, stepped forward and performed the profound bow of her species, mandibles touching the ground in complete submission. Admiral Morgan moved quickly, gently raising Rilta to standing position. "No more bowing," she said, her voice carrying throughout the silent chamber. "We stand together, or we all fall." The assembly erupted in approval. Species that had been enemies for generations found themselves united in possibility. As the formal proceedings concluded, an aged Illuvian elder approached a young acolyte who had been observing from the sidelines. "They could have conquered us all," the elder remarked, his luminescence pulsing with wonder. "But their true power wasn't in their weapons. It was in choosing to use that power to protect rather than dominate." The acolyte watched the humans with newfound respect. They came as ridiculed petitioners and revealed themselves as our salvation. What else might they be capable of? The elder's form brightened with what his species recognized as hope. "That, young one, is why the future suddenly looks much brighter than our past."